This is a picture of a heart, and it's not doing its job too well. The heart is not pumping a sufficient volume of blood from its inner chambers, and unless properly cared for, could result in congestive heart failure. The picture was taken with a gamma camera, without opening the chest of the patient. The gamma camera has the ability to collect its picture images because of energy generated by radioactive isotopes taken by the patient. The information is collected by the camera and is transmitted to a computer which records a video disc and can play back at the will of the technologist and the doctors who use this diagnostic tool in a relatively new field of medical practice called nuclear medicine. Among the physicians who practice nuclear medicine is Dr. Stuart Rosenthal, who, when he is not Channel 2's film critic, is critically analyzing this kind of film for the benefit of patients and physicians in Oregon and Southwest Washington. This is the other side of the life of Stuart Rosenthal.
Well, this is the detector head of the gamma camera, and once we have the radioactivity in the place that it should go inside the patient, this detects the radiation and it remembers where it sees the radiation, so that it can really draw us a picture of where the radiation is. And I'll show you,
like
this is just a point source of radioactivity. It's a little bottle and it's got some radioactive material in it. Now if I hold this right in the center of the gamma camera, you can see on the display there that it's right in the center of the field. If I move this to one side, the display goes to one side. If I move it to the other side, it does the same thing. And up at the top or down at the bottom. So it can draw us a very accurate picture of where the radioactivity is and give us an image of an organ.
So all of this information then goes to the
oscilloscope screen on the camera where we take a time-lapse picture of it. This is a photographic formatting machine, and what it does is to take the data that's transmitted from the gamma camera head and record it on a piece of X-ray film in whatever format you want it. So let's say we want to take a series of images that reflect the blood flow to the head, and we want to see where the blood is every 1.5 seconds. So we want, say, 16 images taken 1.5 seconds apart. So I set the timer here to 1.5 seconds, and we'll get a series of images, each exposed 1.5 seconds. The machine will turn the image on and off, turn the exposure on and off, and get it ready to go. The technologist would come in, get all this set up, then he would go over and inject the patient, and the machine would do the rest when he pushes the go button.
Shall we do it?
All right, let's try. We're going to look at blood flow to the head in this patient, say, and the technologist positions her head in front of the gamma camera. The other technologist comes over and starts getting her arm ready for the injection that we're going to have to make into a vein. He just ties a tourniquet around the patient's arm, and this is an ordinary venipuncture, just like you get when you draw blood, except this time we're going to put in a very small amount of radioactive material.
Isn't that dangerous? Radioactive material inside
Well,
a person?
if you put a lot of radioactive material, yes, but this is a very special kind of radioactive material. It's rather low energy. It is what we call a gamma emitter, so it doesn't have a lot of locally damaging radiation. And it's also in what we call tracer amounts, so it's very, very tiny amount of radioactivity. The technologist waits until he first sees the radioactive material he put in the blood reach the head, and then he pushes the button to start the machine. These are the 16 images of the blood flow to the head that I mentioned earlier. Each of these is taken about 1.5 seconds apart. It shows the radioactive material going into the vessels of the head and then coming out through the venous structures. An X-ray, Rick, only reflects anatomy, whereas our nuclear medicine studies give us pictures which reflect function or physiology.
Such as this one right here?
Right. Now this is a bone scan. You can see it's a little man, and you can see actually all the bones in the body, and this radioactivity that is represented by the density here, all the little dots, is pretty uniformly spread throughout the body. And
that's a normal skeleton?
So this is a normal skeleton. This patient has an abnormal skeleton, and you can tell where there are areas which are darker. And all of these areas which are darker represent areas where the physiology of the bone has been altered by disease. Now, on the other hand, an X-ray, this is an example of an X-ray of some bones. This is the knee area.
Mm-hmm.
When you take an X-ray of bone, you have to have about 50% destruction of the bone in order to see anything on the x-ray, in order to be able to detect the fact that there's something wrong. Whereas very minute changes in bone physiology caused by disease will give us startling changes on the bone scan.
How is it that this technique can offer early evidence of some kind of activity?
Well, it's because whenever you have disease, the earliest changes that you get are physiological. Wherever you have disease, you get physiological changes. The physiological changes are then reflected by more deposition of the radioactive material in the bone, and whenever you have more deposition, you get a black spot on the picture. There are a number of ways to process the information that you get from the gamma camera. One way is to just make images like we saw with the multi-formatter. The other is to send it to the computer. The computer can process it and tell you how much, not just where, like the photographs tell you.
He's just pointing, not actually touching the surface of the screen.
Right, this is a light pin. It's a fairly common computer accessory. He's drawing areas of interest, and we're going to look at the blood flow in these particular areas of interest. And we're going to compare the blood flow to the right side of the head to the blood flow to the left side of the head.
Can you see that in color?
You can see it in color, you can see it in black and white. Any of the things that we can display in black and white, we can display in color, and sometimes that gives us a little better edge on things.
You have one side filled in one color, now another color is coming through.
We're going to try to compare the blood flow to the right side of the head to the left side of the head. Let's say that this patient perhaps was having symptoms that would make you think maybe she had had a stroke.
Okay.
And we want to see if this is the case, if this is what's causing her symptoms, or if she's had a brain tumor or some other reason. So we're going to compare the right side, blood flow to the right side of the head to the blood flow to the left side of the head. We're also going to take a look at the blood flow in the carotid arteries. And each of these has its own separate area.
Is that what the little squares are below?
Right, those are the two carotid arteries, the right carotid and the left carotid.
So when you have a brain scan to be done, it does not necessarily mean it's being done to detect cancer.
No, it can be used for a number of things, infectious diseases, cancer, strokes, some blood clots, things like that, or just to ascertain normality. Now what we're seeing here is the pattern of blood flow that the gamma camera detected and sent over to the computer, and each time the pattern of dots changes, the computer is making a measurement, and it's counting the number of dots, really, or the amount of radioactivity that is over each of those images, each of those areas. Now the computer is computing, and it's going to draw graphs representing the blood flow to each side of the head. Now this is the blood flow to the left side of the head, and this is the blood flow to the right side of the head, and as you can see, they are almost exactly the same. And this gives us quantitative evidence that the blood flow to the right side is equal to the blood flow to the left side, and we can say with a good deal of assurance that this patient probably has not had a stroke.
Is nuclear medicine being applied as widely as it might to the maximum benefit of everyone who could use it?
I think that in general it is. It depends. It's still a relatively new technology, and a lot of people, a lot of physicians still don't know all of the things that it's capable of, but I think they're learning slowly but surely. The people who are coming out of medical school today know a lot about nuclear medicine and about other advanced diagnostic techniques which are complementary to nuclear medicine, and I think are using them very well. And as time goes on, I think nuclear medicine is still growing by leaps and bounds, especially in the field of cardiology.
Most major Portland area hospitals have departments of nuclear medicine of varying degrees of sophistication, and Holiday Park Hospital's facility is among the most sophisticated and advanced. Nuclear radiation is helping to throw more light into the shadowed areas of medicine as a versatile diagnostic tool. I'm Rick Myers for Sunday Morning.